The Poet Speaks podcast is sponsored by the Poetry Lab. Poetry Lab partners attend a monthly workshop led by a teaching artist who represents a fresh new voice in the writing world. The goal, now more than ever, is to hold space for poets to write, read, and craft their learning journeys in a supportive community. And it's only $35 a month. Sign up at thepoetrylab.com/lab partners. All right, everyone. Hello and welcome back to the Poet Speaks podcast, the #1 spoken word poetry podcast in the world. There we go. Our next guest is a Dominican writer, poet, and storyteller. She started to write around the age of 9 when she lived in the Dominican Republic, then continued after immigrating to the USA in 2009 with her family. Now, her writings explore different topics such as growth, love, loss, culture, healing, and spirituality. In fall 2021, she published her first poetry and prose collection, Agridulce. The book is a combination of emotions, thoughts, and experiences. The title means bittersweet in Spanish. She hopes to continue to share her words with the world and create a space where people are safe to communicate and embrace their emotions as part of their self-discovery journey. All right, everyone, welcome to the podcast, Dhayana Alejandrina. Dhayana, how are you?
Thank you. Thank you so much. Love the introduction. Once again, thank you for having me here, sharing the space with you. I'm super grateful and I'm looking forward to an amazing conversation with you.
Absolutely, Dhayana. Absolutely. I was introduced to your work just through we had Mel Marte on the podcast, and I was actually introduced to your work just by following her. Your work actually came into my space and I was just so impressed, so intrigued, and I just really wanted to come talk to you on the podcast today. So thank you so much, a billion, for being here and coming through. Well, first off, let's go over. I like to ask everyone, what is your current location? Where are you at? We need zip code, address, longitudinal. I'm just playing with you. Where are you currently located?
I am currently in Fort Walton Beach, Florida. That's like the panhandle, right on there, Alabama, not the diverse popping area of Florida like Miami or Orlando, but still nice.
Word. Yeah.
But yeah.
So Florida is where you're at currently, but like I read in your intro, you originally from DR, Dominican Republic, correct?
Yeah. Yes.
So you came to the US at 9, right?
I came to the US 2009 when I was 13, yeah.
13. Okay. So for you, what is kind of the difference between, because 13, so that's a good chunk of your childhood was in the DR. Then moving at 13 to someplace like the US, especially Florida, what were the two kind of main differences that you noticed, DR versus USA, immigrating at that age?
So when I moved, my mom was already here. I mean, she had spent some time here, and it was actually to Pennsylvania, Harrisburg, that we moved to. So that is not the place that you'll think Dominicans would exactly go to at first. You'll think New Jersey, you'll think New York, you think Orlando, or any place like that. But it was huge, I'm not gonna lie. Not only did I not spoke any English whatsoever, but just the culture and environment was just so shocking, because in DR, everybody that lived in my neighborhood, we're a family. I mean, like, they knew my great grandmother, they knew my grandma. I was growing up with people that knew really who I was. But coming here, there's a great deal of independence. People are very, in their own individual, and me not really knowing anybody, not knowing the language, not having my friends, that was a lot, especially also the weather, I mean, I got used to the tropical warmth, beach is closed, and none of that was really accessible to me. So yeah, quite a story.
Absolutely. I would think, the weather, I think also the cultural difference there. I mean, that's such a 180, really, really. So tell us a little bit about, for you, how did you come into spoken word poetry? How did that what were the floodgates for you coming from DR? In DR was where you picked up that voice for poetry, or was it after you moved and that's when things started developing for you?
Right. So as a child, I always loved to write, I always had my own diary, with the hard log and the little tiny key. And it was always like sweet little quotes and sweet little poems that I wrote, and I always kept very private. At the same time, my dad used to write me poems for my birthday. So
Wow.
I think it
Wow.
comes from that. He loves to read. My mom loves to read. My mom also wrote, but she told me the other day, I have to find a journal to tell you. But yeah, they both were like creative writers, but they never really share all of it. My dad did. So I think it comes from there as well. And it just felt natural, if that makes sense. I always wrote love letters. I always was that low-key romantic person.
Yeah.
um Always wondering if I would ever get a long letter from somebody, because I always wrote. But I kept it to myself even after that transition from Dominican Republic to the United States. It's very interesting to look back, because I had to learn a complete different language, and with that came the change in writing. So you can tell at the beginning of me trying to write poetry in English, it was very interesting, and funny. A lot of it don't make sense, but hey, it made sense to me. So I think that comes from mom and dad, honestly, and their love for just doing creative writing.
That is so fascinating to me. So your dad, he used to write you poems. That is,
Yeah.
I mean, that's a very sweet type of thing. It's funny when you said that. I have a friend every day, every year for Mother's Day, her mom, she has a family, siblings, like two brothers, and it's her. Every Mother's Day, her mom would literally give each one of the children a poem and like a letter to them. So I think that's very sweet. You know what I mean? That's definitely absolutely very sweet that you have parents out here that, actively, send their kids those letters, poems.
I have a notebook that he gave me, but I'm not gonna lie, I haven't been able to read it all. There's a part of me that knows I'm gonna get extremely emotional. I mean, like
Word,
it's
yeah.
filled with write-ins, whether it's about me or about how he felt or his life. I feel it's gonna be extremely impactful, and it's just like sitting there. It's been like 4 years, and I'm like, okay, I know the time is gonna come when I'm gonna open this, um,
Absolutely. Yeah.
and invite it. But yeah, it's definitely special
Yo,
to have.
that's a honestly, from like pole to pole, that's a very beautiful thing. Honestly, like definitely, yo, that's the next book for you. That's the next book. There
You
we
know
go.
what? Thank you. Yeah.
That's the next book, man. You gotta keep that. Yeah, no, that's absolutely wonderful. That makes me very happy to hear. So for you, I'm curious then. You began, like we said, you began writing at a very young age. Dominican Republic primarily is where you really had those roots kind of rooted, right? And that's your cultural identity being DR, being Dominican. That's a heavy part of your work. For you, what kind of oral traditions or kind of just cultural traditions do you bring being Dominican to your writing?
Oh man. I don't want to say we don't have no filter, but I really love to just express it how it is. And we
Yeah,
tend to be very straightforward. We tend to be spicy with with how we are, even our culture, our movement, our dancing. There's a lot of power and uniqueness in the things that we do. And I find inspiration in just growing up every Saturday morning is cleaning day. There's a lot of little stories and a lot of little things that you do related to, coming from another country that seems so natural that actually plays such a big role into your writings, into your inspirations. And when it comes to those traditions, to the food, to what we value, to the connection to the community, to just wanting to build community, close community, and keep on the tradition. I mean, all of that does play a role, as well as just finding my voice in the midst of everything. Because coming at the years of 13, I mean, I pretty much grew up here, and there's a lot that I miss about home. Or wouldn't go back home that often. And there's that disconnect sometimes of where do I belong? And I don't know if a lot of people who moves, so young to another country feels like that. So there's this constant desire of connecting back to your roots, and that's always so important. And I have been trying to be more intentional when it comes to telling my story. I'm breaking through that shell of actually writing, how it felt to immigrate, to discuss the differences, the challenges of, kids that come, and there's a lot of pressure on us, even if it's not direct. I mean, at least that's how I felt, um, to not disappoint our parents. And creative writing gives me that channel, of just expressing the challenges, but the beauty behind it all. Yeah.
Absolutely. I love that connection. I think you really hit something very special there. This idea of, the immigrant coming to somewhere else. You really are trying to impress your parents, whether it is consciously or subconsciously, and you really don't want to fail because this kind of one thing, talking to people throughout this podcast, also just like being a poet, being able to travel and like display the work. I really find that it seems like when you're an immigrant to this new place or new land, it's not okay. The pressure is on. It's not okay just to be just a person. Immigrant, you have to be phenomenal. You have to be special. You have to be talented. You must like be top of your class. And I feel like for people that are young, it affects you and it hits you so differently because you're young and you're trying to find out who you are. The pressure to be this top shining token really hits you really hard. For you, did you feel like that really hit you hard? Like you alluded to, your writing became a safe place for you to really express that. For you, in what ways did you find it really hit you hard? Like, I have to be this kind of top shiny example of an immigrant. I'm not wasting my parents' time. I'm not wasting society's time. In what ways did you find that kind of proliferating in your life?
Oh man, I feel like we could go on and on about this conversation, and it would get emotional because I didn't come to the realization of the pressure
Mm,
until maybe three years ago, where I had to sit through the pandemic and really think back to everything that I've been through.
mm,
Um, because uh, my mom and my dad separated. So my mom remarried here in the United States. So my dad and my brothers are all in the Dominican Republic, all of them. I am the youngest out of three boys, and the only girl as well. So I didn't realize how much I was carrying, how much I was really, really the rock for my mom here. It felt like I was her only friend. I felt like, and we built that relationship. But I didn't realize how also it would affect me in a negative way because I took upon all her emotions. I felt like I couldn't show her when I was feeling broken and empty because I had to be strong for her, just like how she was strong for me. And that I didn't realize how that affected me into years later, and I had to kind of put a stop to certain things and have healthy boundaries. There's a time where I also felt like I didn't want to speak too much of how good things were going here to my family in DR because I felt like it was unfair. It
yeah,
felt
yeah.
like it felt like it was wrong. It felt like, and I shouldn't have felt like that as a child. I shouldn't have. And they never made me feel like I shouldn't have been honest. I was, but I felt like I grew up way too fast. And to me, it was like, man, I wish my brothers were here. I wish they had the same opportunity. I wish they weren't struggling sometimes like they were. And I wish I could be, the best of the best and give them everything they don't have. But that's too much pressure for a child to have. And so I kept everything in writing or just within. I wouldn't I wouldn't talk about a lot of these things. There's still probably a lot of things I never talked to my mom about, but I did had to put up that boundary, Mom, I love you, but at the end of the day, you are my mom. There's just so much I can help you with because I also have so much that I have to unlearn and learn. Um, but that pressure of not failing them was always there. they never told me, hey, Diana, you got to do what we tell you. You got to go into this career. And hell, if you become a poet, we're disappointed. No, my dad was always like, oh my gosh, write, sing, do what you love. My mom always encouraged me to do the same. They never made me feel less than for what I did. I think it was just a personal, like, I saw what they've been through. So I cannot do the same. I cannot not make them proud. I have to be that person. Man, that was a lot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
man. No, and I appreciate you being able to share that today. I mean, I know a lot of people that are listening, they can relate to that. So, I know you're making them proud. I know you're making them proud. So let's go on. I want to talk about, so your first poetry performance was in 2018 in Okinawa, Japan. So for folks that don't know, Japan is a big country. Tokyo is not the only part of Japan. So your first performance was in Okinawa, which is very kind of like a military based type of style type of place for sure. So I'm curious, why the long wait to perform for you? 18. Why? I guess that some people would consider that a bit of a longer wait as opposed to some people. I mean, you have folks out here, kids starting at like 8, 9, right? So you waited till you were 18. Correct me if I'm wrong. You were 18 at the first time your first
I
performance.
was, well, it happened 2018. I
Mm.
was probably 21,
Okay.
one
Word.
maybe 21, 22. Yeah.
For sure. So I'm curious, why the kind of longer wait to perform? In addition, how did Japan become the place where you burst onto the scene?
First, how it became is because of military. So we had to move to Japan, and that was like the assignment to be there, Okinawa, for 4 years. And I mean, I have my own story about how that felt because moving from the United States to Japan felt like when I moved from DR to the United States. To make it short, I was in college. I did track and field. I was a javelin thrower. And man, I love javelin. Okay. I've been playing volleyball since I was 5. So that is and still will be my passion forever. So when I moved from DR to Dominican Republic, I'm just trying to give you a little background. Um, I was about to become part of one of the Dominican Republic volleyball teams. Like I was actually going to be representing the DR. Like I was being tried as a libero
Wow.
to move up to teams. So it was such a big deal for me. So when my mom told me I was moving to the United States, it was all very heavy. It was all very
Wow.
sad. It was big
Yeah.
when it came to that. So moving forward, college, javelin throwing. I fell in love with javelin in high school, sophomore year, about the end of sophomore year, junior year, because that's when I felt comfortable enough to join a sport because I was finally speaking English. I learned English in a year and a half. So I
Wow.
was finally not shy enough to go out there. My gym teacher, Miss Weller, will always be like, Diana, just enjoy a team. But I was still so depressed, I feel, from knowing that there was not a volleyball team in my high school.
Mm.
And I was like, this volleyball is life. I don't want to do anything else.
Yeah.
Uh, but I fell in love with it, and javelin it was just perfect. So I worked my way. I worked really hard. I got into college. I got into the team, and that's what I was doing.
Mm.
It felt like I was leaving everything behind again.
Yeah.
Um, so when you put all of that into perspective, I didn't really know many writers. Like I was so focused. Sports, school, good grades. Okay, don't party too much. Journal here and there, but you know what I mean. I
Yeah.
wasn't, and then you put into perspective the fact that I was probably still getting used to the vocabulary to just English, so I
Mm.
probably wasn't confident enough to share my work.
Mm.
I have the same journal that I had since I moved to the United States, and I'm just
Wow.
now finally like ending it. Like it probably has like 5 pages left, but it was always very so private, like so private. So I never read anything to anybody until Japan. I actually was the first time that I felt like okay, I could share. And I met great friends, artists, people who love to make music, who love to write as well, who I could be vulnerable with and share, how I felt. My best friend, I met her there as well. And yeah, it just came up. It was an event and they're gonna have singers and comedy. And I met somebody else finally who's a spoken word artist and did poetry. And he said, hey, like, I'll help you, like I'll teach you, how you should read certain words, what makes it more powerful, what pauses you should make, and it just all felt so surreal. And it happened, and better late than never. I was up there in front of a Japanese American crowd and just did what I could.
Yeah. What was that first time for you like then? Were the nerves just kicking in? Like you were, I mean, how did it go?
Yeah. I still have the video and I giggle and I'm like shaking my head every time I look at it because I'm up there. And because it's not just a poetry crowd, because you have people that are gonna sing, they're gonna do comedy, the crowd doesn't know poetry etiquette, right? They're not extremely quiet, and it was hard at first because there's somebody trying to get everybody quiet, quiet down, because it's going to be poetry. So part of me felt so nervous, felt like, oh my gosh, they're not going to listen to me. They're being too loud. What if they're talking and I'm doing poetry? I'm going to get completely confused and scared and I'm going to mess it up. But I just went with it,
Yeah.
I had to do it. It was one of those, you got to do it. You got to open that door because you need to. So even if it wasn't the greatest, to me, it felt like it. I had the people that supported me and loved me there.
Word.
That's
Yeah.
all I needed. Even if it was just 5 people listening to the poems, it was still what I needed, and it felt right.
Yeah.
It felt
Yeah.
like, this is my drive. This is something that I cannot shy away from.
Absolutely.
So yeah, it was great.
I like that. It's your drive. It's something that you just couldn't drive away from. I think that's a very poignant point that no matter how much you try to drive away from it, you're gonna end up back in that same damn place. So you can't drive away from it. So that kind of goes into so 2018 was your first performance. And then soon after you debut poetry collection and it's titled Agridulce. The name, it means bittersweet in Spanish. Please correct me if I'm wrong. But what
Yes.
does that title tell us? What does that mean for you? What is your debut collection? What is that meant for you? All that good stuff. Tell us a little bit more about this came out fall 2021, so just recent. What is it meant for you to have that kind of debut? I mean, that's really short. 2018 and 2021, you never performed before. 2018, now 2021, you already have your debut poetry collection out. First off, let's go over what is that meant for you, bringing that finally to the scene. Like you said, years of kind of just holding that in, and now you're unpacking it for the world. What is the debut? It's your first ever. What does that really meant for you?
It meant courage.
Mm.
It meant that I found my voice and I was no longer trying to hide it.
Mm.
It meant that I needed to close a chapter in my life to really welcome the greatest ones.
Mm.
I sat with my work for a very long time. I sat with my pain for a very long time.
Mm.
I sat with everybody else's shit for a very long time. And I'm a very welcoming, giving person, strong, outgoing, whatnot. But I was never. You would look at me and I don't know, and I'm not mad or nothing about it, but I was everybody else's rock and guidance, and yeah, I'll go talk to Diana, but not a lot of people really asked me how I was doing, so I kept a lot to myself and to my writing. And I started writing Agridulce when I was in Japan. I mean, I had a lot of poems that I was putting away for a collection. I didn't know it was going to be the Agridulce collection, but I was writing a lot of what I was experiencing there, my emotions of the changes of just the growth and the challenges. And I knew I always wanted to write a book. And it just happened to be that. And it just felt like it was a collection of before, a bit of before Japan, and definitely the time in Japan. And then a little bit of coming back, and then the pandemic hit. So that also played a role into the development of it, and just different poems of how I was feeling. That's where it all came together. I could
Hmm.
say, yeah.
Wow, wow, wow. So for you, that's a lot. So that's a lot that you've really, so much life has been packed into Agridulce. Tell us now. I understand the collection is split into two, or is it three different parts?
Into two parts.
Into two parts. Could you talk a little bit about, again, that name Agridulce? It translated to English, it means bittersweet, and then the two parts that the collection has.
Yeah, absolutely. So Agridulce, the book was the original title was just Bittersweet.
Mm-hmm.
And well, actually, it had different changes. So it was actually Sweet and Sour. Sweet and Sour was the original name, and it was like that for maybe like a whole year. And it was fine. It was short. I thought Sweet and Sour, cool. At first, I was not gonna divide the chapters. I was gonna have it all together, because I wanted people to just flip through and feel different emotions and see different chapters, and just resonate in a different way. And then as I was getting more organized and just getting it together, working with people online, meeting different poets is actually funny. Somebody reached out to me as a fellow poet, and she said, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe we have the same title of the
Oh
book."
wow.
And then I was like, "Oh shoot, that's great," But I sat with it for days, for weeks even, and I was like, "I don't know," And I talked to my friend, and she was like, maybe this is a sign for you to change it. But part of me was like, man, I came up with it first, blah, blah, blah. But it just felt like maybe I did need it to. I didn't want to have a book out there with the same name as somebody else. So it made me think of how can I make a deeper connection? What can I think of? And then I was like, wait a minute, I speak Spanish. What in Spanish could represent the same?
Mm.
And boom, agridulce literally means sweet and sour. It gives me an opportunity to talk about my background. It gives me an opportunity to connect with my roots. And it's definitely what I needed. To me, it's unique. It's not really out there. And it just meant to be. So I went with agridulce. And that's when I decided I wanted to separate the chapters. I wanted to separate it. And, the first chapter, Lo Agrio, which means the bitter, I didn't necessarily want to have an order to the poems. I just wanted to highlight the importance of emotions because my book really has a little bit of everything from feelings of depression to anxiety, to pain to heartache, um, to just lack of self love, lack of self compassion, um, to the relationship with the self, with the thoughts, with not loving my body. I wanted to really highlight the truth behind what we feel as human beings. I really wanted to show that we have to embrace both the sweet and the sour in life. That we aren't necessarily our emotions that can be dangerous, but that we do need to recognize these emotions if we want to get closer to ourselves. So that's what I try to do with this collection. And so I divided it that way. Second section, Lo Dulce, is sweeter. It's more like coming back to myself, coming back to my power, understanding that I don't really need to change, that there's nothing wrong with me, that I just need to accept the parts in me that I had abandoned for so long. I need to come back to those parts and give them some love. I have to come back to them parts and give them thank you because now I have learned through them. So that's that chapter, that love for others, but for myself, a little bit of family, a little bit of nature, definitely a little bit of everything.
Ooh, I love that a lot. That sweet and sour. Yeah, that's a perfect metaphor for life. There's a sweet and sour. So I'm curious for you, what has been, and part of your 2022, what has been the sweet and sour? Let's actually make it more specific. What's been the sweet and sour of releasing your debut collection? What's been the good, the bad? What's been the sweet and the sour?
Uh, it's definitely a journey, especially when you're doing it all alone. Like when you're your own promoter, your own marketer, you're trying to get out there to network, to meet people. I mean, that is very challenging, especially for me because I was never on the internet that much. So it meant, again, I had to take a leap of faith. I had to come out of my shell. I needed to just be myself. And so that was the challenge, and it was a bit sour the times that I got rejected for things or couldn't get the opportunity that I wanted because I don't know, perhaps I didn't have that much following or people didn't know who I was. But it was just a reminder that it's okay, and everybody starts somewhere. And the book has gotten a lot of love. I love my book. I have gotten really beautiful messages from people that relates to a lot of it and feel like I'm talking about their life. So it really made me realize, man, it doesn't matter if it's just one person that reads the book. It doesn't matter who they are. There's something there for somebody, and it will hit. They will connect. And it's been a blessing. It really has been. It has opened doors. The patience, the passion, the hard work, it's all definitely paying off. And I'm just being patient with myself. I'm just giving myself grace that I'm actually living my dream. And sometimes we forget that because we're constantly reaching for the next goal. We're constantly thinking about the next thing to do, that we forget that we're actually living in that prayer that we prayed 4 years ago, months ago. I mean, it's right here. You feel
Yeah.
me? So I'm really trying to embrace that, to stay connected and not be so judgmental of like where I'm at in life, because where I'm at in life, I would have never thought I could be, you know? So
Yeah.
I'm really happy about that.
Yes, and many, many big congratulations on the success of the debut collection thus far. And yeah, no, I feel like that sentiment that you made, it's you don't even realize that you're living your dream because it's like the way in which our society works, you have to keep working to keep your dream. So it's almost
Mhm.
like you don't even fully like realize you're living in what you've been praying for your whole life, but you're not even stopping to really actually like soak in all the fruit of your labor and all those things. I can really relate to that. It definitely is a skill, I think, to be able to relax and actually cherish and
It
appreciate
is. It
the
is.
good
I
things.
learned that the hard way,
Yeah.
and every time I go back to the Dominican Republic, I'm also hit with the reality that the US, man, it just got you thinking that you gotta be on a roll and a roll and a roll. But I go to DR and everything's just like, oh man, this is what it's supposed to feel like. So I'm taking that here. I'm reminding myself that it's okay to rest. It's okay to say, I got two things out of the five things on my to-do list today, but that's okay. Because every day feeling accomplished is gonna look different. And I have to listen to my heart. I have to listen to my body, to what I'm able to do, and that's a great deal. Resting.
Absolutely. Rest. Everyone, rest is a big deal. So try your best to rest. Wise words from Diana. So Diana, this has been such a great interview thus far. I'm curious now. Tell me, what do you think people can truly take away from spoken word and poetry?
Um, it's definitely, it has such a transformative power, and some people don't realize it. Some people, I have people that say, "Oh, poetry, like you just write some cute stuff or some lovey-dovey things," and I'm like, it's it's about how we tell our story. See, storytelling has such a transformative power, and people don't realize how it can change others' perspective, how it can put them in your place, how you are speaking about something that someone has buried so deep within themselves and have never had the words to say, and you're giving that life. You are allowing them to sit with it and not feel guilty and not feel unworthy, not feel alone. So poetry and spoken word is powerful. It connects us, it brings us together. It shows, that we're not all so different, you know? Yes, there's big differences, of course, but when it comes to living life, to how we perceive life, to how we feel life, to the struggles of life, because life is also suffering, but poetry highlights, spoken word highlights both sides, the anger, the compassion, the love, the healing. And how could we not relate to that? When you sit down and you just truly listen to somebody's words, um, what it takes for them to stand there and just actually bring that to life. Um, Powerful. I get it that there's different creative expressions, and poetry and spoken word may not be the thing for you, but even when you're looking at theater, movies, anything really has a story. All of it has a story. So it's just a matter of, are you the listener for it? So poetry and spoken word is powerful. Definitely holds many stories from us, from our ancestors, from our parents, to our future selves, to our present selves. Yeah.
Love that, love that, love that. All right, Dhayana, last question, last question. Why do you need to get your words out?
Oh, I need to get my words out because I held them in for too long. And now that I have come to the realization of how beautiful it is to be unapologetically myself, and how close I become to myself by just embracing the power behind writing and poetry and connecting with people in my most like vulnerable self. I mean, to me, that's important. I write because our ancestors used to not even be able to write or to read or to keep anything that told their story. So why would I not take this privilege of telling my story, of expressing my emotions, of connecting with people, and perhaps having an impact of somebody that really needs it? Um, I know that everybody has a little bit of a writer in them. And even if you keep, the writings to yourself, even if you don't share them with anybody, or if you are a writer and share them around, you still make an impact because you could talk to somebody, you could read a poem to a friend and completely change their perspective, completely make them feel seen and loved and welcome into your space. So that's what I want to do. I want to continue to shine the light on the different emotions, on being vulnerable enough, feeling scared of it, feeling like you can't talk about it. Um, I just want to be able to continue to be me and be honest with how I feel about life. Yeah.
Word, and that's a word. Love that, love that. She wants to continue being honest. That's why she needs to get her words out. All right, Dhayana. Oh my goodness. I wish we could continue
Yeah.
talking to you all day, but it's been such an amazing conversation. I really enjoy talking to folks like you that are really, you can tell the radiation and the love of poetry just shines off you. So I really appreciate the conversation today, Dhayana. So please tell us before we end, and what is the rest of 2022 looking like for you and beyond, for your writing, your spoken word, your collections, and please tell the folks out there, where can we find all of your amazing work, websites, social medias, all that good stuff.
Absolutely. 2022 is looking like a lot of great opportunities and, time to devote into new projects. So watch out for workshops. I will be trying to host writing workshops for folks to give out tips on writing and self-publishing and marketing. That's something that I really want to help emerging writers with. Just a little project, really special project coming through that I'm working on, and I'm really excited about it. You guys can find me on Instagram at Dhayana Alejandrina. I'm sure you'll put it up there because if they hear me saying, they may not know. But I have a link there where you can support my book. You can get signed copies or go to Amazon and buy yourself a copy, your mom a copy, your friend a copy. And yeah, just trying to continue to do what I love the best way.
Absolutely. So everyone, Diana's links will be in the YouTube page of the Poet Speaks podcast, the YouTube page in the description box. All right. So to get all Diana's links, please go to the YouTube page of the Poet Speaks podcast. Find all her links, all that good stuff. So Diana, thank you so much for being on the Poet Speaks podcast today.
A pleasure. Thank you so much. We really vibed. I really love your energy. I appreciate you welcoming to your space.
Absolutely. And we thank you for being on today. All right, everyone, please big shout out to Diana. Go check out all of her amazing work. All right, everyone, this is the Poet Speaks podcast, the #1 spoken word poetry podcast in the world. Please remember, all right? So everyone, we will see you soon, all right? Bye-bye, everyone.